Texas summers have a way of cooking everything in sight. Metal fences, mailboxes, tempers. The air that afternoon felt like a hairdryer set to vengeful. Pam and I had just finished setting the last hinge on the cedar gate that led to the creek behind our yard. A small, simple gate, pressure-treated wood, black iron latch, nothing fancy. But to us, it meant peace. Buddy, our golden retriever, had chased one too many kids' bikes down that path. We were tired of random teenagers cutting through our yard to reach the creek. One of them even tossed beer cans over the fence last month. The gate wasn't decoration. It was defense. I remember Pam brushing sawdust from her arm, squinting at the finished job. "Looks solid," she said. "Solid enough to survive a hurricane." I replied, locking the latch with a satisfying clack. We had no idea that sound, the click of a perfectly legal gate, was the first shot in a neighborhood war. By sunset, the email started. Subject: unauthorized structure. From Karen Wilson, HOA president. Pam read it aloud, her voice flat. All modifications to perimeter fencing must be approved by the HOA Architectural Review Committee prior to installation. She looked up at me. "She's serious." "She's bored," I said. But the next morning, a printed copy of that same email was taped to our front door with yellow highlighting and a signature in blue ink. Karen's trademark flourish. It wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration. Karen Wilson wasn't your average neighborhood busybody. She was a brand. Blonde bob, immaculate manicure, clipboard practically grafted to her hand. She had turned our small Texas subdivision, Cedar Crest Meadows, into her personal fiefdom. The HOA meetings looked less like community gatherings and more like courtroom dramas. People whispered about her fines, her inspections, the way she'd show up at night snapping photos of lawns that dared to grow an inch too tall. But this was new. She'd never come after us before. "Pam, try to brush it off. She'll cool down once she realizes it's not violating anything." Except she didn't. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Then another, each more aggressive than the last. Final notice, violation pending fine, non-compliant gate structure. I checked the HOA bylaws myself. Page 47, paragraph C. Gates and fences conforming to local code are permitted provided they do not impede emergency access or public right-of-way. That last line was key. There was no public right-of-way. The land from our back patio to the creek was ours, verified on our closing documents and county survey. But that didn't stop her. The confrontation came faster than I expected. It was a Saturday morning, the air sticky and heavy with humidity. I was mowing when Karen's golf cart rolled up like a sheriff's patrol. Her son Kyle, riding shotgun, smug and bored. Karen stopped dead center at the edge of our lawn, sunglasses hiding whatever expression she thought passed for authority. "Mr. Jordan," she said, "you're in violation of Community Code 6.2b. I killed the mower and wiped sweat from my neck. Good morning to you too, Karen. That gate has to come down." I looked at her, then at Kyle, lean kid, maybe 17, scrolling on his phone like he couldn't care less. "Pretty sure my gate's not on community property," I said. Karen smirked. "That path behind your lot is a shared access easement." "No, it's not." "Yes," she insisted. "It's been public since the subdivision was established." "Funny," I said, "because the county says otherwise. Want to see the survey?" That was the first time I saw the look, the one I'd come to recognize later. A small twitch at the corner of her mouth, like she'd swallowed something bitter. "You're not a team player, Kirk," she said. "This neighborhood works on cooperation." "Cooperation's great," I replied. "Extortion's not." She drove off, tires spitting gravel. Kyle shouted something about old people and their gates before they disappeared. That night, the drone appeared. Pam was brushing her teeth when she froze at the window. There's something hovering over the patio. I looked out and saw it. A small quadcopter blinking red and blue lights, buzzing low over our yard like a mechanical mosquito. I stepped outside, grabbed a flashlight, and pointed the beam directly at it. The drone veered up and vanished toward the Wilsons' house. "That's it," Pam said. "We're documenting everything." We set up a proof wall in the garage. Emails, photos, letters, timestamps. Each one pinned in neat, furious rows. What started as a neighborhood disagreement was morphing into something darker. Every morning, new letters arrived. Karen cited us for non-compliant gate hinges, excessive backyard lighting, even failure to maintain harmonious lawn edging. It was harassment, methodical and deliberate. And yet, through the constant irritation, there was something else, a pattern I couldn't ignore. Karen wasn't just obsessed with control. She was obsessed with that strip of land leading to the creek. Pam noticed it too. Why does she care so much about a gate no one else can see? I didn't have an answer yet, but I could feel one coming like thunder on the horizon. 3 weeks later, I got home from work to find Pam pacing the kitchen, holding her phone like it was radioactive. "You need to see this," she said. She hit play. On the screen, shaky phone footage showed two teenagers, Kyle and a friend, standing at our gate. Kyle rattled the latch, muttering something about being trapped. Then, unbelievably, he pulled out his phone and called 911. We're like stuck or whatever, he told the dispatcher. "They locked us in. We can't get out." Pam hit pause. "He called the police," she said, "because he couldn't figure out how to open a latch." I laughed, then stopped. "Wait, he was inside our yard." "Yep, that was trespassing." 10 minutes later, a police cruiser rolled up, body cams on, hands visible. One officer approached the gate, slid the latch open with a single smooth motion, and looked right at the camera. "This," he said, deadpan, "is how gates work." That video went viral in the neighborhood group chat within hours. Half the community laughed. The other half stayed silent, too afraid of crossing Karen. But it wasn't over. That night, as the sun went down and cicadas screamed from the trees, Pam said something I'll never forget. "She's not just angry. She's scared, which means we're closer to something." I stared out at the dark shape of the gate, our line in the sand. I didn't know it yet, but we were about to uncover a secret that would blow this whole neighborhood apart. And when we did, there'd be no going back. You could tell a lot about a lie by how neatly it's printed. I learned that standing in the county records office 2 days later, staring at two maps, one from our closing packet and one the HOA had submitted years ago. Same subdivision, same lots, except one tiny, dangerous difference. On the HOA's version, that narrow stretch of land behind our property, our creek access, was labeled Community Access Easement. On ours, it was marked Private Lot 47 Extension. Someone, somewhere, had changed the line. I could practically feel the heat radiating through the paper. "Ma'am," I asked the clerk behind the glass, "who submitted this version?" She adjusted her glasses, tapped a few keys, then frowned. Says it was updated by Cedar Crest Management in 2016. Signed by Karen Wilson. Of course. Pam leaned over my shoulder. "So she doctored a map to make it look like that land was public?" "Not legally," I said, "but close enough to scare people." The clerk lowered her voice. "You're not the first to ask about those files." I turned. "Who else?" She hesitated. "I probably shouldn't say, but a man named Davenport came by last month. Said he used to be on your HOA board." The name hit like a spark. I remembered Davenport vaguely. Quiet accountant, resigned 2 years ago. Nobody knew why. Pam's eyes met mine. "We should find him." That night, back home, I spread both maps across the kitchen table. The county's fluorescent blue stamp glowed under the light, while Karen's version looked faded, almost hand-altered. "You think she forged this?" Pam asked. "I think she buried something." The drone came again that night, hovering higher this time, watching from just above the tree line. I grabbed my phone and filmed it until it retreated. "She's watching us," Pam said. "No," I replied. "She's watching that land." We found Davenport 2 days later. He lived in a ranch house 20 minutes north, retired early, and sounded nervous when I called. "I don't talk about HOA business anymore," he said at first. "We're not asking for gossip," I replied. "We're asking why a map was altered under your board." Silence. "Then you'd better come by." His home smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. The living room was filled with boxes labeled Cedar Crest HOA. He kept everything. "I was treasurer," he explained, rummaging through a box. "When Karen took over, things changed. She wanted the HOA to protect shared assets. That's how she phrased it. He pulled out a folder marked Easement Adjustment, 2016. Karen said the developer had left the creek access unassigned, so she had a surveyor correct it. But the developer's estate never approved the change. He showed me a scanned email chain. Karen pushing for an expedited filing, threatening to fine homeowners who questioned it. Pam read over his shoulder. She used fear to lock everyone in line. Davenport nodded. She had help, too. County clerk's office. Someone named Melendez. They rubber-stamped everything. Then he looked at me. You should be careful. People who challenge her don't just get fines. They get audited. Pam frowned. Audited. He handed me one last paper. A notice from the IRS, dated 2018, addressed to Tom Davenport. For a year, I thought it was coincidence, he said quietly. It wasn't. Driving home that night, the sun fell behind the trees like a slow-burning fuse. Pam was silent until we hit the subdivision sign. White letters cracked and faded. Cedar Crest Meadows, a community that cares. She laughed bitterly. Cares about what, exactly? I didn't answer. My mind was spinning too fast. Karen's fake map wasn't about power. It was about value. That land by the creek ran behind 6 lots, including ours. If she could mark it public, the HOA could sell access rights for a developer trail, or worse, for utility easements. She wasn't defending community property. She was flipping it. 2 mornings later, we got the notice. HOA violation escalation. Property will be subject to lien unless non-compliant structures are removed within 10 days. Pam dropped the paper on the counter. She's going to take our house. Not if I take her map. That night, I went back to the records office alone. I told Pam I was grabbing takeout, but really I just needed to see it again. The official copy. The clerk wasn't there, but the night staff let me sign in. The document vault smelled of toner and dust. I pulled a file. 2 maps, identical except for the line. Then something caught my eye. Faint embossed initials in the lower corner of Karen's version. M.M. Melendez. The county clerk's name. I took photos of everything. But when I stepped outside, headlights flared across the parking lot. A silver SUV idled near my truck, engine running, windows tinted. For a long minute, neither of us moved. Then it rolled forward slowly, lights off, gliding out of the lot like a shadow. When I got home, Pam was waiting on the porch, arms folded. "Where's the food?" she asked. I handed her the phone instead. "Forget dinner. Look." Her eyes widened at the photos. "This is proof. Not enough for court," I said, but enough to scare her. Pam exhaled. "Good. I want her scared." She didn't say the rest, but I could feel it in the silence. Because I'm already terrified. The next morning, Karen struck first. As I walked out to the truck, I saw it. Fresh paint sprayed across our driveway. Selfish liar. Pam came running. Oh my God. I knelt down, touching the letters. They were still wet. A faint sound carried through the morning air, laughing from across the street. Kyle and 2 friends stood by their car, pretending to check their phones. I walked toward them. "You think this is funny?" Kyle smirked. "You brought it on yourself." Something in me snapped. "Tell your mother to back off." He stepped closer. "Or what?" Pam shouted from behind. "Kirk, don't." I turned away before my temper finished what my mouth started. As I did, Kyle muttered, "Hope you like police visits." That night they came. 2 cruisers. Flashing lights bouncing off the gate. Officer Ruiz, same one from the 9/11 incident, looked almost apologetic. "Got another complaint from Mrs. Wilson. Says you threatened her son." Pam groaned. "Are you kidding me?" Ruiz sighed. "Look, I know what's going on here, but I have to file the report." "File it," I said. "And when you're done, I'll show you something better." I led him to the garage and pointed at the wall. Maps, letters, emails, timestamps, photographs. He studied them silently for nearly a minute. Finally, he said, "You should take this to the state attorney. This isn't HOA business anymore." I nodded slowly. "Then that's exactly what I'll do." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Ruiz's words, the maps, the SUV in the parking lot. Every instinct told me we'd stepped over some invisible line. But I also knew one thing for sure. Karen had made her last threat. Because now I wasn't just defending a gate. I was defending the truth. And truth, once open, doesn't close easily. You never forget the moment you realize you're not crazy, just targeted. That morning, I woke to the sound of Pam's printer whirring like a Gatling gun. She'd been up since 4 a.m., scanning through every HOA email, every document we'd archived since moving in. The kitchen looked like a war room. Coffee mugs, highlighters, open folders, a corkboard on the wall covered in strings and post-its. Pam didn't even look up when I walked in. She slipped, she said. Karen. She slipped and left something behind. What? Pam turned her laptop toward me. On the screen was a forwarded email thread. One Karen had accidentally sent to us instead of her management firm. The subject line read, Easement Proposal and Corridor Access Fund. I scrolled down, my eyes catching phrases that tightened my gut. The Jordan's obstruction remains an issue. Once access is cleared, developer commits to $85,000 community fund. Finder's fee, terms attached. Pam's voice was ice. She's selling our property, rights to fund her own slush account. I read the attachment, an unsigned agreement between Karen and a development firm named Travis Creek Partners. They'd promised the HOA a community enhancement fund, payable only after unrestricted corridor access was confirmed. Our land was the corridor. She's committing fraud, I said. Pam nodded, and we're the only ones who know it. By noon, we'd printed everything. Every map, every email, every false violation notice. We'd even laminated Karen's doctored survey. Pam pinned it in the center of our board with a red thumbtack, like it was the heart of a criminal conspiracy. That's motive, she said. Now we just need witnesses. And we already had a lead, Melendez, the county clerk who'd signed off on the altered map. I called her office that afternoon. The secretary put me on hold twice before Melendez finally picked up. Her tone was polite but cautious. Mr. Jordan, those documents are routine filings, she said. I can't discuss internal approvals. Routine filings don't erase property lines, I replied. Karen Wilson's map isn't legal, and you know it. A pause. Then, quietly, you should be careful who you accuse of forgery, Mr. Jordan. That was the moment I knew I'd hit a nerve. 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. If you want proof, meet me behind the old feed store after dark. Come alone. No name, just a time and a location. Pam hated the idea immediately. This is how people get shot, she said. Then I'll park close to the street, I told her. If it's a setup, I'm gone in seconds. At 8:15 p.m., I pulled into the dirt lot behind the abandoned feed store. It was quiet except for the hum of crickets and the distant rumble of trucks on the highway. A figure stepped out of the shadows, a woman in a gray hoodie, face partially hidden. She looked familiar, but it took me a second to place her. Melendez. She glanced around nervously. You can't record this, she said. I raised my hands. Fine, just talk. She exhaled, rubbing her temple. Karen promised me a seat on the HOA's advisory board if I expedited her easement correction. Said it was a harmless boundary fix. But then the developers started calling. They offered to donate to our clerk fund. It wasn't until I saw your address that I realized what they were doing. You helped her steal private land, I said quietly. She flinched. I stamped a file. That's it. But I'll tell you this, Karen's not working alone. The developer's using HOAs all over Travis County to open corridors for a utility deal. Quietly, legally, on paper, but dirty as hell. Can you prove it? She hesitated, then handed me a flash drive. Emails, meeting notes, transaction ledgers. Don't use my name until you have to. Before I could thank her, headlights swept across the lot. She froze. That's my cue. She slipped into her car and vanished into the night. Back home, Pam was waiting by the window. Well, she demanded. I plugged in the drive. Hundreds of files loaded. Internal HOA memos, developer proposals, even scanned receipts from a consultation lunch between Karen and a Travis Creek executive. Pam scrolled through, her jaw tightening. She's been bribed. Then she clicked a file labeled HOA Internal, Legal Discussion.pdf. The first line nearly made my stomach drop. HOA has authority to pursue easement access through lien enforcement if property owners resist. They're planning to take our house, I whispered. Pam sat back slowly. Not if we expose them first. The next few days were a blur of preparation. We assembled binders, timelines, and USB backups. I even bought a cheap GoPro and strapped it above the garage door, aimed right at the side gate. Karen's emails kept coming, escalating, taunting. Your continued defiance will result in legal seizure. Failure to comply may impact your credit rating. Each one signed in that same perfect cursive. Karen Wilson, HOA president. Pam started keeping her phone by her side every second of the day. She wasn't sleeping well. Neither was I. But the strange thing? Beneath the fear, something new had taken root, clarity. We weren't reacting anymore. We were planning. On Friday, the weather forecast showed a massive thunderstorm brewing for Saturday night. The same night Karen's latest final notice expired. Pam looked up from her laptop. Think she'll try something? She won't come herself, I said. She'll send her proxy. Kyle, Pam said grimly. I nodded. We'll be ready. We were. Every camera was live. The doorbell, the corner cams, the birdhouse cam Pam had hidden with perfect precision. The storm rolled in at 11:30 p.m., lightning cracking over the creek like the sky itself was watching. At 12:11 a.m., motion alert. Two shadows moved across the yard. Kyle Wilson and a friend, both in hoodies, both soaked in rain. One carried bolt cutters. Pam whispered, recording. 911 dialing. I slipped outside before she could stop me. The rain hit like a wall of glass. Get away from my gate, I shouted. Kyle turned, eyes wide, face twisted. You can't own nature. Then nature can pay the fines, I shot back. He lunged fast, slammed me in the chest. My feet went out on the mud, and I hit the ground hard, the world spinning. Then sirens, red and blue lights slicing through rain. Two officers. Karen Wilson running into the chaos, her robe flying open, screaming. He attacked my son. He ambushed him. Pam came out slowly, holding her tablet like a torch. Officer, she said, voice steady, rain dripping from her hair. You need to see this. She turned the screen. The trail cam footage played, Kyle cutting the lock, me yelling from a distance, then Kyle shoving me. The officers watched in silence. Pam swiped. Second angle, neighbor's window cam. Another video, another proof. Then a third, grainy cell phone footage from across the street. Audio crystal clear. Get away from my gate. F*******, you old man, shove thud. When the screen went dark, the older officer turned to Karen. Ma'am, he said, please step back. Karen's face went pale. He looked at me. Mr. Jordan, do you want to press charges? I glanced at Pam, muddy, shaking but defiant. Yes, I said, for trespassing, criminal mischief, and assault. As they cuffed Kyle and led him away, Karen just stood there, drenched, mascara bleeding down her cheeks. She whispered something, barely audible over the rain. You think this is over? I stared back. It's just starting. Morning light hit our kitchen like an interrogation lamp. The house smelled like wet soil and adrenaline. Mud still streaked across the tile floor, and my shoulder throbbed from the fall. Pam sat at the table with her laptop open, eyes red but focused. Karen's already spinning it, she said. She turned the screen toward me. A neighborhood group chat. Karen Wilson. My son was assaulted while performing a safety inspection on community property. Gary T. Board member, we should hold an emergency HOA session. For transparency. Lana H. Why are police involved again? Pam scrolled. They're turning it into a witch hunt against us. I poured 2 cups of coffee. My hands were still shaking. Let them. We got the footage. We've got truth. Pam's voice cracked. Truth doesn't trend in Cedar Crest. Gossip does. By noon, an HOA email hit every inbox in the neighborhood. Subject, pending investigation, community incident on Creekside Lane. The board regrets the unfortunate confrontation last night involving residents. Pending review, all construction approvals for 114 Creekside are suspended. Our address. Our house. Karen was using her power again, even after her son had been arrested. Pam's mug hit the counter hard enough to splash coffee. She's doubling down. She's cornered. That's when snakes bite. That afternoon, I met our neighbor Finley by the mailbox. He held a folded newspaper, local section, front page headline. HOA dispute turns physical amid ongoing tensions. Below it, a blurry photo of flashing police lights and a half-visible gate. She fed this to the Herald, Finley muttered. Said your gate blocks public land. Reporter called me. I told him what really happened. What did he say? Finley smirked. Said it sounds like a story, the kind that sells papers. By evening, the videos were viral, not online but locally. Phones out at the farmer's market, whispers outside the elementary school. We'd become that couple. But something unexpected happened. People started knocking. First was Sarah, the young mom from 2 doors down, the one Karen had fined for non-conforming birthday balloons. She stood on our porch, clutching her phone. I saw the footage, she said. You're not the only one she's harassed. Then came Brian and Leah, who'd been cited for unharmonious fence paint. Finley joined, next with a grin. Guess what? I dug through the HOA site archives. Karen's been fining people illegally for years. Some of those charges don't even have board votes. Pam leaned against the doorframe, a slow spark returning to her eyes. Then we hit her where it hurts, in her own system. We spent the next week turning our living room into a command center. Files everywhere. Coffee stains, yellow notes, stacks of printed bylaws. Pam pinned a new heading on our corkboard. Operation Loud Card. I raised an eyebrow. You're naming missions now? You'll see, she said, smirking. Pam had noticed a pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Karen and her ally Gary did their security patrol in his lifted golf cart. Gary's pride and joy, a Frankenstein beast of an engine that sounded like a chainsaw dragging metal. Noise ordinance, Pam said, tapping the HOA rulebook. Section 9.3. No sounds exceeding 55 decibels after 10 p.m. You know who wrote that rule? Karen, I said. Pam grinned. Exactly. The plan was simple and perfect. I ordered a certified decibel meter online, the same model city inspectors used. Finley volunteered to be our witness. Pam set up the camera upstairs, zoomed in on the street. We rehearsed like we were planning a sting operation. Because we were. That Thursday night, we waited in the dark. At 10:14, the sound came, the obnoxious sputter of Gary's golf cart engine echoing through the quiet. Headlights sweeping like search beams. Pam's voice whispered through my earpiece. Rolling now. Camera 1 active. I crouched behind the cracked open garage door, holding the decibel meter steady. As the cart passed, the reading spiked. 68, 70, 72 dB. I filmed it. Finley filmed it from across the street. Pam got a wide shot from above. 3 angles. 3 timestamps. 1 violation, by their own rule. When the cart stopped, Karen shouted across the street, smug as ever. Routine patrol, Mr. Jordan. Routine violation, Mrs. Wilson. I yelled back, holding up the meter. Finley's voice echoed like a sports announcer. And that's the 72 decibel penalty, folks. Even in the dark, I saw her flinch. By sunrise, the complaint packet was ready. I filled out the official HOA noise violation form. Line by line, perfect grammar, precise timestamps. Attached, notarized affidavits, digital links to the 3 videos, even a decibel calibration certificate. But I didn't send it to Karen. I sent it to every single board member by certified mail. There was no way for her to bury it. The fallout was immediate. At the next HOA meeting, Karen tried to laugh it off. A misunderstanding. Community patrol privileges. But the board had the footage, the numbers, the proof. The secretary cleared her throat. This does constitute a violation. They fined Karen and Gary $100 each, pocket change, but the symbolism was nuclear. The neighborhood buzzed for days. Karen, the self-proclaimed guardian of community standards, had finally broken her own rule on camera. Her armor cracked. Her followers went quiet. And for the first time, people stopped whispering and started talking. Pam turned to me that night, eyes gleaming. She's weakened, she said. Now we take her down for good. Ow! Pam flipped to page 12 of the bylaws. 10% of homeowners can call a special meeting for any reason. I stared at her, a grin spreading. "You're thinking what I'm thinking." She nodded. Vote of no confidence. 2 days later, we started collecting signatures. We didn't need to knock twice. Sarah signed first, handshaking. She fined me for chalk art. Then Brian. Then Leah. Then Finley, signing with a flourish. Time to dethrone the Queen of Covenants. By the end of the second day, we had over a third of the neighborhood. When we turned in the petition, even the HOA's lawyer couldn't stop it. A date was set. A Thursday night. Community clubhouse. 1 room. 100 angry homeowners. And one woman about to face the reckoning she'd built for herself. You could feel the heat before you even stepped inside. The community clubhouse was packed wall to wall, folding chairs, whispers, camera phones. The air hummed with anticipation, like the second before a thunderstorm breaks. People weren't here for cookies and minutes. They were here for blood. Pam stood next to me near the back, holding a file folder so thick it looked ready to explode. Her hair was pulled back, expression carved from steel. "You ready?" I whispered. She didn't look at me, just at the front table where Karen sat under fluorescent light, pretending not to sweat. "Been ready for months," she said. Karen banged the gavel, her voice syrupy and strained. "Order, everyone, please. Tonight's meeting will proceed according to Section 4 of the Cedar Crest bylaws." Finley muttered beside me. Section 4. The one she rewrote herself. I try not to smile. Karen's son sat 2 seats down, wearing a neck brace he didn't need. The board flanked her like nervous extras in a courtroom drama. Behind them, a banner read "Community First, Integrity Always." Pam leaned over. Irony's dead. The first 40 minutes were the usual theater. Reading minutes, reviewing landscaping contracts, discussing noise disturbances. Every word designed to drain the energy from the room. Then came the line item everyone was waiting for. Petition for special vote. Karen cleared her throat, paper trembling slightly. "A few residents have voiced concerns regarding board leadership. We'll address this swiftly and professionally." Her voice cracked on professionally. Pam squeezed my hand once, then stood. All eyes followed her. "Pamela Jordan, 114, Creekside Lane," she said, voice clear and steady. "I represent 32 residents who've signed a petition requesting a vote of no confidence in this board, specifically in the leadership of Karen Wilson." The crowd rippled, gasps, murmurs, even a few claps. Karen forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Pamela, I understand emotions are high, but..." Pam cut her off. "Emotions? No, evidence." She walked toward the front, folder in hand, every step deliberate. She placed it on the table like a lawyer dropping a bomb. "These," she said, spreading pages like cards, "are record-verified HOA violations issued without quorum approval. 27 in total. Signed solely by you." Karen's smile faltered. "That's standard administrative discretion." Pam clicked a remote. The projector flickered on behind her. Slide after slide appeared, screenshots, timestamps, videos. The first showed Gary's golf cart roaring past our driveway, meter reading 72 dB. Then a still frame of Karen's own email chain, approving fines without votes. Then a police report. Incident 447B, trespassing complaint. Each slide hit harder than the last. Each line of text stripped away another layer of her control. By the 5th slide, the room wasn't breathing. Karen slammed the gavel. "That's enough. You're misinterpreting documents you don't understand." Pam didn't flinch, then explained this one. She pulled out the final page, a scanned letterhead from the county assessor's office. "The property at 114 Creekside Lane lies entirely within private boundary. Any HOA enforcement beyond this point constitutes unlawful encroachment." Pam set it down like a verdict. "You've been fining and threatening homeowners for rules you had no legal right to enforce." Karen's eyes darted to the board members. None would meet her gaze. The silence stretched, a full 10 seconds of freefall. Then Finley, bless him, stood up in the back. I motioned to remove Karen Wilson as president, effective immediately. The room erupted. Cheers, claps, someone whistled. Karen banged the gavel like she could beat back a hurricane. Out of order. Out of. Seconded, shouted Leah from the middle row. Thirded, yelled Brian. Pam crossed her arms, smiling. Now it's official. The vote was chaos. People lined up, one by one, signing their names on a clipboard passed through the crowd. Karen's face drained color with each signature. When the board tallied the numbers, she was still whispering to Gary, desperate, red-eyed, cornered. Then the secretary announced it. Vote count. 84 in favor, 11 opposed. Motion carries. The room exploded. Applause. Relief. A few tears. Karen sat frozen, staring at the gavel she'd once wielded like a weapon. Pam leaned close enough for only me to hear. Checkmate. As the crowd filtered out, Karen stood slowly, her voice trembling. You people don't understand what you've done. You'll destroy this neighborhood. I turned back to her. You already did. We just cleaned up the wreck. She glared. You think you've won? I met her eyes. No. We've just started. Outside, the Texas night was cool, the stars like scattered nails across black velvet. The air smelled like cedar and gasoline, the scent of endings and beginnings. Pam walked beside me, barefoot on the asphalt, her laughter breaking the tension at last. For the record, she said, that felt damn good. I laughed too. Better than therapy. But beneath the relief, a pulse of unease lingered. Karen wasn't the type to vanish quietly, and Cedar Crest had a way of keeping secrets buried until they clawed their way back. The morning after the town hall felt like the end of a long siege. Sunlight cut through the blinds like a quiet victory parade. Pam brewed coffee strong enough to peel paint, humming softly. The first time in months she'd seemed at peace. The world outside looked ordinary again. Birds on the fence. Lawn slick with dew. No red HOA letters in the mailbox. No Karen. But peace in Cedar Crest didn't last longer than a pot of coffee. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Finley, you seeing this? Leah, Karen's Facebook is gone. Deleted. Brian, county records show a withdrawal on HOA funds. I frowned. That's fast, even for her. Pam was already pulling up the HOA's public portal on her laptop. She scrolled, eyes narrowing. That's weird. The financial reports are gone. Like all of them. Maybe they took them down to review. She shook her head. No, Kirk. The server index is missing. Someone scrubbed the archive. She clicked another tab. Our screenshots folder. The PDFs we'd saved of HOA transactions, meeting minutes, the developer emails, they were all there. But the timestamps told a darker story. They were modified last night, she whispered. 2:13 a.m. Pam leaned back, rubbing her temples. She's not gone. She's covering tracks. I glanced toward the window. Outside, Karen's house sat dark and still. The curtains drawn, the driveway empty. But the unease was electric, like the static before a lightning strike. She's smart, I said. She'll try to spin it as a clerical error. Make herself the victim again. Pam gave a bitter laugh. Yeah? Let's make sure she doesn't get the chance. That afternoon, we met Finley at his office, a converted garage lined with filing cabinets and model trains. He had something for us. He opened a folder and slid a few printed bank statements across the desk. These came from a friend at the credit union, he said quietly. I shouldn't have them, but you should see this. I scanned the pages. 3 large withdrawals from the HOA account, all marked as Community Development Fund transfers. Each one sent to the same LLC, Wilson Property Solutions. Pam exhaled sharply. Her company, Finley nodded, created 18 months ago. Same address as her husband's office. She's been siphoning money under the pretense of neighborhood improvements. I looked up. How much? He grimaced. Just under $70,000. Pam's jaw tightened. That's not incompetence. That's embezzlement. We brought the files straight to the interim HOA board that evening. Leah, now acting president, looked ready to faint as she read through the documents. She had signing authority, Leah murmured. Nobody ever questioned it. She was the oversight. Pam placed a flash drive on the table. This is everything. Her emails, her fake maps, her withdrawal trail. We'll need to file a complaint with the county auditor tonight. Leah hesitated. Do you think she'll fight it? Pam's voice was ice. She already is. That night, around 10:30, we heard a sound that froze both of us mid-conversation. A thump, then another. From outside, Pam moved to the window. "You see that?" Across the street, a figure in a dark jacket was by our mailbox, flashlight beam slicing through the dark. They were reaching inside it. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and stepped onto the porch. "Hey," I shouted. The figure jerked up, then ran. The flashlight tumbled to the curb as they sprinted toward the creek path. Pam was already calling the police. When the officer arrived 10 minutes later, he picked up the flashlight, clicked it off, and sighed. "Same brand the HOA uses for night patrol," he said. "Looks like somebody wanted to check your mail without leaving prints." Pam folded her arms, or to make sure something didn't get delivered. The next morning, our suspicions were confirmed. A certified letter from the county auditor's office, addressed to Pam, was found dumped in the bushes by the side of the road. Torn open, rain-soaked, unreadable. But Finley had already sent a duplicate. Inside, confirmation that the auditor's office had opened a formal investigation into the Cedar Crest Homeowners Association, citing financial irregularities and potential fraud. Pam read it aloud, slow and deliberate. Effective immediately, all HOA funds and accounts are to be frozen pending review. She looked at me, eyes wide, a mix of victory and disbelief. "We did it," she said softly. She's cornered. Later that night, the neighborhood group chat lit up again. Someone had spotted Karen's car, parked at a motel off Highway 77. Someone else swore they saw movers at her house. Rumors spiraled, but the only post that mattered came from the county clerk's office 2 days later. Public notice. Former HOA President Karen Wilson is under investigation for misuse of community funds and falsification of records. Pam leaned back in her chair, reading it twice, then turned to me with a quiet, exhausted smile. "You know what this means?" "Yeah," I said. "We finally get to take down that stupid gate sign." She laughed, the first real laugh in weeks. Outside, the gate still stood, battered by storms, filmed by drones, fought over in meetings. But it was ours. For the first time, undeniably ours. The morning news broke the story before we even had coffee. Former Cedar Crest HOA president under investigation for fraud and falsified community records. The TV anchor's voice was calm, detached, like she was reading a traffic update. But to us, it was the sound of justice, long overdue and painfully earned. Pam stood frozen with the remote in her hand. I watched the footage on screen. A slow pan of our neighborhood's welcome sign, yellow tape across Karen Wilson's front porch, and a local reporter standing in the drizzle. Sources close to the investigation confirm that over $70,000 in community funds were misappropriated into shell accounts controlled by the former HOA president. Pam muted the volume. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was exhaustion wearing a victory mask. By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing like a kicked hornet's nest. Some were stunned. Some pretended they'd always suspected. And a few, Karen's inner circle, kept their heads down, pretending not to hear. The group chat was chaos. "Leah, we've suspended her indefinitely. County's taking over HOA functions for now." "Brian, does that mean no more fines?" "Finley, someone check if hell just froze over." Pam grinned at that last one. "You know," she said, "I might actually frame that." That evening, as the sun dropped low over the Texas hills, I walked the perimeter of our property. The air smelled of wet cedar and new beginnings. The gate creaked softly when I pushed it open, the same gate that started everything. It was no longer a symbol of defiance. It was just ours again, a line in the dirt we defended and somehow survived. Pam joined me, camera in hand. "Closure photo," she said. She took one picture of the gate, another of me leaning against the post, and one of both of us, mud-stained, battle-worn, but smiling. The next week brought hearings, depositions, and a tidal wave of paperwork. But for once, none of it scared me. Karen's lawyer tried to play it off as accounting misunderstandings and digital confusion. The county auditor disagreed, publicly. The local DA's office released a statement that afternoon. Evidence indicates intentional misrepresentation of property boundaries and misappropriation of HOA funds. Charges pending. Pam read the quote aloud, then looked at me. "Intentional misrepresentation," she said, with a dark little smirk. That's bureaucrat speak for she lied and stole. We drove past her house later that day. The windows were covered in brown paper. A realtor's sign leaned in the mud, pending sale. The movers were gone. So was the smug little plaque that used to hang near her door. President, Cedar Crest HOA. Pam rolled down the window, just enough to say it. Good riddance. But the story didn't end with Karen's arrest. The fallout rippled across the neighborhood. Leah and Finley organized an emergency HOA election. Transparent, open, honest for the first time in years. They rewrote the bylaws. Every homeowner got digital access to the accounts. No more secret votes, no more mystery fines. At that first meeting, I stood quietly in the back, watching as neighbors debated amendments, laughed nervously, and actually listened to each other. When Leah spotted me, she motioned for me to speak. I hesitated. Then I walked up to the mic, cleared my throat, and said the only thing that felt right. Property lines don't just exist in the dirt. They exist between right and wrong. We built this place together. Let's start acting like it. Applause, real, honest applause, rolled through the room. Pam squeezed my hand. "You sound like a senator," she whispered. I grinned. God forbid. Weeks later, the dust finally settled. Karen pled guilty to reduced charges. Restitution, probation, public apology. She didn't show up to the last hearing, but her lawyer read her statement aloud. I acted out of pride and misplaced authority. I regret the harm I caused. It sounded rehearsed, empty, but hearing her name followed by the word guilty was enough. Pam leaned over. "Closure," she said. I nodded. Yeah, closure. Months passed. The gate rusted a little. The creek rose and fell with the seasons. Life resumed its ordinary rhythm. But every now and then, a new neighbor would stop by, someone moving into one of the homes that used to belong to Karen's allies. They'd ask about the gate, and I'd smile, lean on the fence post, and tell them the story. Not all of it, just enough. About the night of the storm, the cameras, the lies, and the truth that came crawling out one email at a time. Most would listen wide-eyed, shaking their heads in disbelief. That really happened here? Yeah, I'd say. Right here, Texas soil and all. Pam turned the story into a blog post later, half cautionary tale, half manifesto. She called it the price of a locked gate. It went viral overnight. Thousands of comments. Homeowners across the country sharing their own HOA horror stories. Reporters called. Podcast hosts wanted interviews. Pam declined most of them. She wasn't chasing fame. She just wanted the truth to live somewhere permanent. One evening, about 6 months later, we sat on the porch watching the sunset burn orange over the creek. The air was warm, quiet, peaceful in a way it hadn't been in years. Pam rested her head on my shoulder. "You think she ever looks back?" I sipped my coffee. "Maybe. But the thing about people like her, they only look back when they're cornered." Pam smiled faintly. "Well," she said, "we built a pretty good corner. The crickets started up in the tall grass, and the world finally felt balanced again. Not perfect, not painless, but fair. That's all we ever wanted." And as the night deepened over Cedar Crest, the sound of the gate creaking softly in the wind didn't feel like defiance anymore. It felt like freedom.